It was a quiet, unassuming night in Washington, D.C. The air was thick with the hum of cicadas, and the city lights cast a faint glow over the streets. Kamala Harris sat in her modest living room, holding a steaming cup of herbal tea. The day had been long and taxing, back-to-back meetings, briefings, and decisions. Yet now, for the first time in hours, she could sit back and take a breath. Just as she closed her eyes, the buzz of her phone on the coffee table broke the stillness. The clock on the wall read 11:57 p.m. Kamala furrowed her brow. No one called this late unless it was urgent. "Hello?" she answered, her voice cautious but steady. A moment of static followed, and then a deep, gravelly voice came through the receiver. "Madam Vice President, there's something you need to see." Kamala's grip on the phone tightened. "Who is this?" "Let's just say I'm someone who knows the truth, and I'm giving you a chance to discover it for yourself. The key is under your mailbox. Use it to access the archives beneath the Capitol. You'll find what you're looking for." Before Kamala could respond, the line went dead. She stared at the phone, her mind racing. Was it a prank, a threat, or something else entirely? One thing was clear. This wasn't a call she could ignore. She knew this was just the beginning. Kamala quickly slipped on her coat, her movements swift and precise. The cool night air wrapped around her as she stepped onto the porch. The street was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that made every footstep, every rustle feel amplified. She crouched beside the mailbox, her heart pounding as her hand brushed against something cold and metallic. A small ornate key, intricately engraved with the symbol of an eagle. Back inside, she examined it carefully. The design was unmistakably old, its craftsmanship unlike anything she'd seen in modern times. What could it unlock? And why her? The questions buzzed in her mind as she weighed her options. After a moment of hesitation, Kamala grabbed her phone and texted her closest aide. "I need access to the Capitol archives. Don't ask why, just make it happen." Minutes later, she received a reply. "On it, you'll have clearance by the time you arrive." The Capitol building loomed in the distance, silent and imposing under the moonlight. Kamala entered through a side door, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Her aide, a young man named Darren, was waiting by the entrance to the archives. "Madam Vice President," he whispered, handing her a security badge. "Everything's ready, but this is highly unusual." Kamala nodded. "I know. Stay here. I'll handle it." The archives were a labyrinth of shelves, dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of old paper. Kamala moved cautiously, her eyes scanning the rows of boxes and folders. Finally, she reached the back wall, a solid steel door with a keyhole that perfectly matched the engraving on her key. She inserted the key, and with a soft click, the door creaked open. Inside was a small, dimly lit room with a single desk. On the desk sat a leather-bound journal, its cover marked with the words, "The Project, Operation Luminary." Kamala sat at the desk, her hands trembling as she opened the journal. The first page bore the signature of a former vice president, long deceased, with a date, July 4th, 1952. The entries described a covert operation involving a hidden network of informants, secret meetings with global leaders, and decisions that had shaped the course of history, all kept secret from the public eye. But what really caught Kamala's attention was a particular passage. "The beacon must remain lit. The light is not just a symbol, it's a guide, a warning, and a promise. Only those chosen can understand its purpose." Beneath the text was a crude sketch of an object that looked eerily similar to the key she had found. The words sent a chill down her spine. What beacon? What warning? The last entry was cryptic. "When the time comes, the keeper will know. Trust the light." Kamala left the room, the journal clutched tightly under her arm. Darren was waiting outside, his face unreadable. "Find anything?" he asked casually. Kamala hesitated. Could she trust him? "Just old records," she replied, her tone deliberately neutral. But Darren's eyes flicked to the journal and his demeanor shifted. "That doesn't look like just old records, ma'am." Kamala's instincts kicked in. "Why are you so interested, Darren?" For a moment he said nothing. Then with a resigned sigh he said, "Because I know what you're holding, and if you're not careful, so will others." Before Kamala could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Darren grabbed her arm urgently. "We need to go, now!" They ran through the archives, the journal pressed tightly against Kamala's chest. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder, and the sound of sharp orders followed. "Find her! She has it!" Darren navigated through the dimly lit halls, his movements quick and practiced. Kamala's heart raced in her chest as they darted through the Capitol's hidden passages. The weight of the journal was both a reminder of their danger and the promise of the truth they were about to uncover. They reached a small hidden exit at the back of the building. Darren opened it with ease, and they rushed into the cool night air. The sound of their pursuers faded behind them, but Kamala knew they weren't safe yet. They ran toward her car, the engine already revving as they jumped inside and sped off into the night. Kamala glanced over at Darren, her pulse still racing. "What the hell is going on? Who's chasing us?" Darren's face was pale, his eyes reflecting a mix of fear and determination. "You've just opened a door that some very powerful people would do anything to keep shut. If they find out what you have, it could change everything, everything." Kamala's mind spun as she looked down at the journal in her lap. What had she gotten herself into? And what secrets had she just uncovered? They drove for what felt like hours, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, Darren guided Kamala to a small, unmarked house on the outskirts of the city. The windows were dark, and the place seemed abandoned, as if it were designed to disappear into the night. Darren ushered Kamala inside quickly, locking the doors behind them. The house was sparse, cold even. The walls were lined with maps, documents, and files, some of them stamped with the red words, "Top Secret." Kamala set the journal down on the table and turned to Darren. "Start talking," she demanded, her voice calm but firm. Darren hesitated for a moment, glancing nervously at the journal. He swallowed hard and began, his voice low. "Operation Luminary was never just about history. It's about the future. Our future. That journal. It holds information that could change everything. Secrets about alliances, betrayals, and plans that are still in motion. There are people out there, very powerful people, who will do anything to stop this from getting out." Kamala took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. She wasn't sure what to believe yet, but one thing was clear. The stakes were higher than she had imagined. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice quieter now, searching for answers. Darren's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something like trust in them. "Because," he said, his voice low and steady, "I believe you're the only one who can do something about it. You're the only one who can protect the truth." Kamala felt a heavy weight settle in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone, and there was no turning back. As the night stretched on, Kamala and Darren pored over the journal, examining every detail. Kamala had noticed a recurring pattern in the text, references to a place called the Beacon. But what was the Beacon? And why was it so important? Darren, furrowing his brow, flipped through the pages until he found a worn map tucked into the back of the journal. The map was fragile, its edges torn and yellowed with age, but the ink was still legible. The map pointed to a remote area in Alaska, far from any major city, deep in the wilderness. Kamala leaned over the map, her fingers tracing the lines, absorbing every detail. "This is it. This is the next step," she said, her voice resolute. "If we want answers, that's where we need to go." Darren looked at her, his face serious. "It's not going to be easy, but if you want the truth, that's where we have to go." Kamala nodded, her mind made up. She didn't know exactly what she was walking into, but she knew that she had no choice. The truth had to be uncovered, no matter what. The private plane cut through the clouds, heading north toward Alaska. Kamala stared out the window, watching the snow-covered landscape stretch out below them. The air inside the plane was thick with tension. The journal and map were the only things they had left to guide them, and Kamala could feel the weight of their importance. Darren sat across from her, his eyes glued to the map, his mind clearly racing. Kamala couldn't help but feel the anxiety building inside her. What was the Beacon, and why had it been hidden for so long? As the plane descended into a remote airstrip, the stark white landscape outside seemed to swallow them whole. A lone guide awaited them, standing in the cold, his figure barely visible against the snow. "You're here for the light, aren't you?" the guide asked cryptically, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. Kamala glanced at Darren before nodding. "Yes, show us the way." The guide nodded and began to lead them into the wilderness, his footsteps steady and sure despite the blinding snow. The guide led them through the snow-covered landscape for what felt like hours. The wind howled around them, but they pressed on, determined to reach their destination. Finally, they reached a secluded mountain range, hidden from view by the thick snowdrifts. Amid the mountains stood an ancient structure, its stone walls weathered and worn by time. At the center of the structure, a towering beacon stood tall, its light pulsing faintly against the surrounding darkness. Kamala stepped forward, the journal in her hand. As she reached out toward the beacon, the light intensified, surrounding her in a glowing aura. It was as if the light itself was alive, responding to her presence. In that moment, Kamala understood. It wasn't just a beacon, it was a call to action, a reminder that true leadership wasn't about power. It was about protecting the truth, no matter the cost. As the light enveloped her, Kamala heard the final words of the journal in her mind. "The light must never die." The screen faded to black, leaving Kamala standing at the beacon, ready to face whatever came next. She had uncovered the truth, but the journey was far from over. That's it for today's story, but the journey doesn't end here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an exciting chapter. Leave a comment below with your thoughts and share this video with your friends. Stay tuned for more mysteries, and thank you for watching. See you next time.